is Indian country today.
Esquili, yes, thank you for joining us. I'm Patty Thalahongva. Tribal casinos are preparing to reopen this month. Northern Quest Resort and Casino in Spokane, Washington will welcome back guests on May 5th. It's been closed for the last month in response to the coronavirus pandemic. A posting on social media says patrons should expect to see changes, such as enhanced cleaning and sanitizing procedures, plexiglass barriers in some areas, and floor markings to get people to stand 6 feet apart in lines. Face masks will now be a part of the employee's uniform for those who have direct contact with guests. And guests are encouraged to wear their own masks or purchase one in the gift shop. The message says the casino management put together a, quote, thoughtful approach to a phased reopening. The note also says the management is counting on everyone's collective commitment to stay home when they feel sick. And in Arizona, 2 tribes plan to reopen on May 15th, the Fort McDowell Yavapai Nation and the Gila River Indian Community. First Nations peoples in Canada now have an app to learn the latest information about COVID-19. According to the Winnipeg Sun, the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs launched the app this week to help get out the information to the 62 tribes in Manitoba. It's good use of modern technology, says Grand Chief Arlen Dumas, especially when so many areas in the region have issues with high-speed internet. Now, First Nations people can get trusted information about COVID-19 and also information about community events, and they can hear directly from the chiefs. Well, it's Friday, May 1st, the day the Pueblo of San Felipe in New Mexico typically celebrates its annual feast day, but that will look different this year. Earlier this month, the Pueblo reported 52 positive cases of the coronavirus. Since then, 1,300 Pueblo members have been tested. There are now 117 positive tests, according to the Pueblo's governor, Anthony Ortiz. Because of that high number, he canceled all feast day services, including dances. Governor Ortiz is encouraging his people to observe the day in their homes. For the latest numbers of positive COVID tests in Indian country, let's go to Jordan Bennett-Bigay, our Washington editor. Jordan?
Yate Patty, Yate Shikis, So as the latest numbers hold as of last night, April 30th, there's a total of 3,067 cases, positive confirmed cases within the Indian health system and 101 deaths. And these cases came from the Choctaw Nation, which saw an increase of 2 cases. The Navajo Nation saw an increase of 164 new cases and an additional 9 deaths yesterday. They reported yesterday. And as you pointed out, San Felipe more than doubled their cases, and they have 117 total right now. And this is a small population, Patty. According to the 2010 census, there's a total of 2,200 individuals living in San Felipe Pueblo. And when you consider that and look at the infection rate, according to the confirmed cases they reported, San Felipe Pueblo has an infection rate of 5.32%, which could possibly be the highest in the country, as New York State right now has an infection rate of 1.6%. And this is just astounding when you look at the percentages this way, especially for the small community. And what's really surprising and really, I guess the silver lining about this is the Pueblo is really, going through extreme measures to try to decrease the number of cases right now. Like, for example, 24 are sheltering at the Buffalo Thunder Resort and Casino, as well as more are isolating in place in their homes. And they also see that 34 have recovered, and there are 10 people who are being hospitalized right now.
That is astounding when you put that into perspective with, like you said, the population and then the high percentage of people who are testing positive. And Buffalo Thunder closed its casino in early March, and now they're using their hotels there to house those people. So that's good information in a way that the Pueblos are coming together in New Mexico to help people recover from this virus.
Yes, they are, and we hope they continue to, unite to battle this epidemic or pandemic.
Thank you, Jordan Bennett-Bigay.
Go ahead.
And we'll be right back. Welcome back. On Fridays, we have our Reporters Roundtable, and today we have two special guests on our program, our interns for Indian Country Today. Please welcome Kalle Benallie. Kalle, thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you, Patty.
And also Quindrea Yazzie. Quindrea, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Patty.
Well, we certainly have had a lot of fun working with the two of you, and we want to let everyone know that you are both students at Arizona State University in the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communications. And we had you both as our interns this semester. We started out pretty standard, pretty routine, and then that changed. But before all the crazy changes, Kalle, tell us about some of the stories that you were working on.
So I worked on a story with Diane Humatewa. She was the first federal woman judge in the United States, or for the Native Americans, sorry. And yeah, so I was able to interview her in her chambers and write a story about her story. And also I wrote a pretty popular piece about a Navajo-owned coffee truck on the reservation. So. And
very different stories, right? You went from covering federal courts, and that story came from a Department of Justice report about the lack of diversity on the bench.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, it was very interesting to hear her perspective and how she came into law and what she thinks about the current statistics, because she is 0.25% on the federal bench. So she's a very, very small statistic.
And you were able to visit the judge in her chambers?
Yes, a lot of security to get into her chambers, but it was really interesting to see and go down to the federal court in Phoenix.
And her office is basically just a few blocks from our newsroom in downtown Phoenix.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's in a very big building in Phoenix, and yeah, it was nice talking to her.
So again, Diane Humatewa is a Hopi and the first Native American woman to serve as a federal judge and the only Native American serving on the federal bench at this time. Is that right?
Yes.
So that was quite the experience. And again, as an intern and coming into our newsroom and being able to get out and report on that kind of a story. And then you went, as you were starting to tell us, to a completely different story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I just happened to see the post on our work Slack, and I just thought it was interesting because they let their, I'm pretty sure 90-year-old grandmother help with the coffee machine, and it was just an interesting Instagram post, and so I wrote about it. They told me a story about how she just likes to visit her grandchildren, and so we included that in the story, and it kind of just blew up. And next thing you know, our editor Mark Trahan said it hit like 100,000 views on the page.
Yeah, so you can really see that wide reach when you have a story like that really resonates with our audience.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And then Quindrea, what were some of the stories you first started working on when you started the semester with us?
So I started out writing a sustainability piece on kind of absorbing our ancestors' knowledge about food. And then I went into health and medicine, and there I wrote about the University in North Dakota creating their first Indigenous health PhD program, and it's actually the first in the world, so that was really interesting and cool to capture. Aside from that, I did a few breaking stories, and then I started focusing on COVID-19.
Well, you had a story about teaching as well in this new environment.
Yes, and that ties in with the health and medicine story. So the Indigenous Health PhD program, they started a public health program, and they it's really interesting to have that program amidst this coronavirus, because I guess that's what public health is all about, and how public health can kind of tie in with administrative things in health. So
Mm-hmm. And then there was another story that you reported on about 3 kids who went missing.
Yeah, so that story, it was really interesting. It was my first breaking story, and I was very nervous at the time because I've done a few breaking news stories, but this one kind of really tied close to home because it was 3 Native American boys in the Phoenix Valley that went missing. So I hopped on the call with Mesa Police Department, and they were more than willing to help out with me or help me out. And thankfully, they were found a couple hours later. So we updated the story, and it was my first breaking news story that I guess I had to update very quickly.
And that's the nature of this business. You start the day out with one story, and you think you have some information, and then that information changes, and so you have to respond to that and update your story. So both of you, you've been at the Cronkite School and learning journalism along the way. Kalle, you are getting your BA in journalism this semester, and of course, this semester has been totally upended. I'm sorry you're not going to be able to walk. What are your plans for graduation?
Well, ASU is hosting a virtual graduation, so there are options to include your picture or do a video message to your family and friends. I chose the virtual graduation. I mean the picture, so that's what I'm graduating online.
Oh, and you're not alone. There's so many people out there who are having to go to a virtual graduation or celebrate in some way, but certainly not what you had planned, I'm sure.
No, I was hoping to have a graduation party, so that's probably going to be postponed till later.
Yeah, and then Quindrea, you actually graduated in December. Did you go through the whole ceremony and walk and uh, all the different pomp and circumstances, as they call it?
Yes, I did. So I graduated in December, and I actually walked in May of last year. But I only had 2 classes to finish in the summer, but they ended up uh, canceling classes because not enough people attended. But it was really nice graduating in December, and thankfully before the virus.
Yeah, everything has changed with this in this new world of coronavirus, and so how are we adapting? One of the stories that you worked on as well, Kalle, before this whole pandemic hit us, was the story about Leona Kakar. Can you tell us about her?
So she was helped pioneer and move forward one of the first water rights settlement acts for Native Americans, and she lobbied for over, if I remember correctly, like 20 years. And she went to Washington, D.C., and she really helped her community in Auction, Arizona. So yeah, it was really interesting to talk to her.
If I recall that she became aware of the disparity with her tribe because they had rich farmlands, but they leased it out to a farmer,
Mm-hmm.
and that farmer subleased it yet again, and she worked. Was it at a local grocery store?
Yeah, she was a cashier, and her brother came to visit, and he was hearing talk around the town. And so she just one night asked him while they were hanging out, and he told her, and she was very surprised, and she wanted to make a change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she'd been seeing. She was helping to cash the checks of the workers, and she saw how much money they were making, and she thought, well, why can't that money be coming directly to us? So, yeah, that was an interesting story, and in some way, we'll complete that story and get that out to everyone, so people can hear and know about Leona Kakar in Auction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What surprised you the most about your internship, Kalle? Anything?
Let me think. Well, I think the obvious is the coronavirus. I That's a whole different situation, making the employees work from home and not being able to go to the office, and making everything completely virtual like that. That's surprising.
Yeah. As a journalist, I covered the Rodney King riots in Los Angeles. I covered the Northridge earthquake, and then of course the Oklahoma City bombing. That was huge. And then we found out that people had ties to Arizona. So that was really, that made us work very hard, because we had to follow all these ties that Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols had to Kingman, Arizona. So we worked really hard on that story. And I kept thinking, gosh, this is a huge story. This is a big story of my career. And then 9/11 happened. And I really thought since 9/11, and I've been in forest fires, all kinds of stories. And I really thought 9/11 was going to be the biggest story of my career. And now here we are living through a pandemic, a worldwide pandemic. So the two of you are just starting your careers, and you're starting in the middle of this pandemic. That's I just can't imagine what that is like, as a young journalist. Quindrea, do you care to share some thoughts about that?
Yes, sure. So when I first started at Indian Country Today, I was very excited because I was newly graduated and election year is coming about, and I was really excited to get on those election stories. And boom, coronavirus came, and everything changed almost overnight. I was working in the newsroom, I guess my second time working in a newsroom, and I was really excited to be there. And now I'm working at home at my kitchen table. So it's very different, but it's still challenging, and it forces you to do things and I guess kind of be creative with interviewing people. And Zoom is very new to me. So yes.
Yeah, Zoom has become our friend, I think, across the newsrooms everywhere. Yeah, that is it's just very different circumstances, to be working from home and to be trying to continue to live life as much as we can, without all the other pressures that, it's unavoidable, but we're making it do. So let's talk a little bit about some of the work you've been doing, because when all of this hit, and especially I would say that this was all taking place, Indian Country Today had a census town hall that we held in California, and at the Paula Resort there. And we were really, the census was a big story on our story list, to get the word out to Indian Country to file their census forms so that Indian Country could be counted. So that's been something that, besides the election this year, that those are the two big stories that we were following. So we had the town hall, and then we came back from California, March 10th, 11th, in that time frame, and this pandemic just hit. So we went to work and got busy with looking at how do we collect data, how do we collect information, as we watched the bigger venues like Disneyland closing, and we started looking at casino closures in Indian Country, all kinds of events. So tell me a little bit about the, I think, Kalle, you're looking at events and such that have been closed. Tell us about the data that you've collected so far on that.
Yeah, so I've been looking at when the date that they close, when they announce that, because that's important to track how the actions that they took to control the coronavirus in their community. I looked at if they plan to open again, if they rescheduled that, what state they're in, what tribe they're in, and just any links to that information and to the social media.
Did you see anything that surprised you when something came across early on and you realized, oh my gosh, that's a big event and they're closing, they're postponing or canceling?
I'm sorry, it broke up. Can you repeat that?
Did anything surprise you? Any event that you went, oh my gosh, this one is postponed or this one has been canceled?
I would guess probably the largest was maybe the Gathering of Nations in New Mexico, because that's a very big tradition, and it's one of the biggest events for the Native community, and so probably that.
Yeah, a lot of powwows. We're waiting to get notice. When are they going to close? So, and that also does that include schools too?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I missed that. So schools and that had, we had stories from our other reporters on our staff who talked about students who were having a hard time getting home, whether it was from college or whether it was from studying abroad. So trying to get people home, and people had to move fast in a short amount of time to get home safely. So right now, how many events, do you have a tally of how many events have been either postponed or rescheduled?
My data, it's probably over 100, and it's still continuing on as the events of this year approach. Yeah.
And then what about reopening or rescheduling? Have any of them rescheduled, set new dates?
Yes, about a majority of them, or just canceled in general.
Okay, and that's the other thing too. It's hard to guess when you can reopen because, while we reported today that some casinos are reopening this month, things can change within the next week, and then we're back to, what are we going to be doing and social distancing. Okay, and Quindrea, what about your data sheet with the casinos?
So I thought it was very interesting and very important to have this information because as a reporter looking on data on Indian country, it's very hard to find these numbers. So it was very important for me to create these numbers. And so I've been tracking the casino closures all over the nation. And right now I'm approximately at 360 casinos, and I still have a few more to do. And by a few more, I mean maybe about 50 more. And it's really interesting to kind of see how they snowballed effect. One did it and they all did it. And as far as openings, again, one did it and they're all doing the same date. But it's very interesting to see that some of these states, such as Washington, they're closing very late. A lot of the earlier casinos, they closed March 19th, like in California. And then some March 23rd, but I see some closing as late as April 12th.
Wow, what state is that?
And that's Washington.
That's in Washington?
Yes.
So, and that's interesting too, because that was a hot spot, at least in Seattle.
Yes.
So and part of that data, then we can go back and map, like we're doing with the COVID-19 syllabus. We can go back and map that and see, is there a correlation between casinos closing, events closing, and the number of positive cases of the coronavirus. So we can look at that and say, well, these people or this community closed right away, and therefore their number either went down or held steady. So that is interesting to keep that kind of data together. What has surprised you about collecting that data?
What surprised me most is, I guess, the states that have no orders. They're closing a little bit later, such as South Dakota, North Dakota, Iowa. They're all closing a little later, but some of them, they actually did close. But as of April 9th, they're opening up their hotels, they're opening up their golf courses. So that's really interesting to see. And I wonder if all the other casinos are going to kind of try to do that first.
Mm-hmm. And not just open, but it'll be interesting to see who actually shows up. Because again, when these casinos are reopening, they're talking about having to put into place some kind of social distancing measures. So not chairs next to each other, poker tables, or any kind of like roulette tables. People won't be right next to each other anymore. And so what will that look like? And all we can do is wait and see, and to see if people show up. So, okay,
yes,
well, oh, so go ahead, Kalle.
Yes, I said it was going to be very interesting to see that information.
Okay, well, last thoughts, Kalle. One last thought of your internship here at Indian Country today.
I'm just excited to continue to keep working and hopefully finish that story that we worked on with Lee.
Absolutely. All right, thank you, Kalle, and congratulations on graduating, and thank you for being an intern. Quindrea, last thoughts?
last thoughts. I do hope to, I guess, continue to, I don't know, to kind of get used to, I guess, Zoom and get used to creating these numbers for people and just broadcasting more often.
Okay. Well, thank you for being one of our interns here this semester, Quindrea, Yazzie, and congratulations on your graduation.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. Have a safe weekend. Take care of yourselves. Your life is precious. We'll see you on Monday. I'm Patty Talongva. Enjoy your weekend.
This is Indian Country Today.